Okay, so we're going to touch a... Hang on just a second while I get this. Okay, so we're going to spend a little bit more time with this whole concept of, number one, why go to some sort of a goofy wildcat? And then the next thing is, I'm documenting my trials and tribulations, both for those who are interested in seeing it and for those who are interested in doing it. My biggest thing is, guys, try this out. And I mentioned a few of the things that can go wrong and how to plan ahead and how to make things work. So I'm gonna, today I've been setting up this 30 Hellbringer in my left-handed setup. When I went to order barrels, pandemic I guess, I couldn't find any inch 350 barrels, that being an inch 350 shank. Remember, this goes back to my contention that we need extra poundage on that joint, especially with a big honking cartridge like this. It's not so much the big honking cartridge, it's the big bolt face. PPC got a little tiny bolt face, doesn't have much to act against. 243, 473 size bolt face, 308, even a 30-06, even though the case is longer, still that small bolt face. But you go to a Magnum bolt face and all of a sudden you're just getting a lot more stress on the joint and you're throwing a lot more flex into the system. That's the key. So I went to order parts for this thing because I came to the point where I feel that the 338 blown out 404 Jeffrey case that I'm calling the Hellbringer with a 300 grain bullet putting, I don't know, 5 or 6 tons into the system is too much for the stock, too much for the base of the system. I know the action can handle it, but I think the stock is flexing. So I decided to go with a 300 Hellbringer, which is really hard to come up with a rationale for, except that, let me reiterate, to shoot accurately, to make and maintain good cases, and to achieve true accuracy in this world, absolutely, without fail, requires custom dies. You can either fire your cases fairly lightly and neck size only and keep that fit, which has worked for years. You can take just an old jackleg system, neck size just to hold the bullet, and never size your brass until it gets so tight you're ready to gall your lugs. When I first started shooting back in the shooting bench rest stuff in the 80s, every bench rester I talked to said, remember, grease your lugs, grease your lugs, grease your lugs. You gotta have, you gotta grease your lugs. People will be looking at each other, hey dude, grease your lugs. You're starting, because you could easily gall or scrub the face of the lugs. Because nobody neck sized. There was no such, nobody full length sized. There was no such option. And they achieved high accuracy, and you can to this day. But the correct way to control vibration, make your brass last a long time, and most of all get superlative accuracy is with a custom die. Don't let anybody tell you you can go buy some jackleg die off the shelf, I don't care who matched stuff up, and then go resize, push your shoulder back 2,000ths and blah 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 and you'll be good. No. You're gonna bust your cases in less than 10 reloads. 2,000ths of shoulder pushback is ridiculously much. Well, basically, 2,000ths times 10 is 20,000ths. By the time you've stretched the case 20,000ths, you see where I'm going. It's going to start breaking. So, in the interest of, I'm just putting this thing together, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to document this step, because somebody somewhere is going to try this stuff out. And when they do, as I mentioned in the last vid, Parker O'Ackley pioneered the concept of improving cartridge cases with a 40 degree. He brought the sides out to 10 TPI, and he went with a 40-degree shoulder. I don't like that. I go with a 35-degree shoulder. So call this, instead of the Ackley improved, this is the Allenwa improved. Doesn't matter. It's not my idea. It's not my thing. It's just what I choose to do. So the number one thing about a well-improved cartridge is that it be able to fire. I wrote these notes down here so that we can draw pictures and expand. Factory. It must take factory cases. In the case of this 300, that I'm calling the Hellbringer, you can take factory 300 RUM, stick it in here, and go fire it. If you're a factory guy, no loss. It comes out looking like the brass you pick up at the range has been fired through a semi-automatic of some sort. Like an AR bulges the brass way out. So, no harm done. You go out, you buy 300 Remington Ultra Mags, you go hunting, you throw your brass away. Life is good. We're all happy. But it must fire factory. Now, I started this building something called the 270 Hellbringer. This is custom all the way. 270 we can choose to start with various. I'm choosing to start with 7mm RUM brass because I can neck them down. I mean, it works out really good. I can set a head spacing shoulder. I can play with lengths. But now we're talking Wildcat in the sense that you can't even fire factory rounds in it. The 300 Hellbringer and the 338 Hellbringer will both fire factory rounds. I can fire 338 RUMs in the Hellbringer 338 series. Both of them use Remington Ultramag cases. So, in that sense, they're universal. You go out, you lose your ammo, you run out, you whatever, you go down to the store, you buy some. Now, that's when the retards don't vote us out of ammunition, so we have to get through this so-called glitch in the market that we've got right now. So headspace becomes a thing. For all of you that are going to build this, that are going to go try this, or anything else, remember, when you're trying to do something like this, headspace gauges go out the window. They've been making 243 Ackley headspace gauges and all the other Ackley headspace gauges for years. And they vary, and they're this, and they're that. And the bottom line is, I took some cases. I've got ADG, I've got Nosler, and I've got Remington. Okay? I headspaced on these three cases. I got a feel on all of them. They are different. Now remember this. Cases vary wildly out of the box. Just like chambers vary wildly. Just like sizing dies vary wildly. The one place that sizing dies are almost guaranteed to be too tight or too small is this critical base dimension. A factory sizing die is set up for only a couple. This is the one really controllable piece on the case. This is where everything extrudes up from the button, which is, the button is right here, and everything extrudes up away from it. As this sits here, babbity babbity bap, and it squeezes up, then they go turn this on a lathe. So you've got a very consistent piece. The one thing that is the single smallest variable in factory sizing dies is this dimension right here. Unfortunately, they size them all to be only a couple thou bigger than this base. So as soon as this base seasons and opens up just a little bit, mashes out, widens out, your cases start to stick, and there's nothing you can do about it because your chamber is too small. So you've got to go to a custom chamber. Once we're going to a custom chamber, then it opens up the possibility of going all kind of wild and crazy. How about we do something that we can blow out and fix the taper and fix the shoulder? I've got a WSM reamer that's got a short, tight neck on it for match usage from years ago. I can set these up so that they blow out to hold an extra probably 20 or 30, no, I'd have to guess here, but 12 to 15 grains of powder between the blowout and moving the shoulder forward, and I have a reamer that'll do it. I don't know that I'll ever do it. Doesn't matter. So, if a person is going to do this, headspace gauges are out the window. If that makes you uncomfortable, then go take a box of tissues and crawl back under your rock because you don't understand. Headspace is not something to get uncomfortable about. Either the case goes in or it doesn't. If it goes in, either it booms or it doesn't. If it doesn't, the headspace is probably too long. Where did we lose us here? There's no danger involved with headspace. Worrying about headspace is for feebletons, but dealing with it is something that people get into great arguments about. And 90% of the people in the world, because they don't know any better, because they don't know any better, insist on using gauges. Well, unfortunately, when you're doing something like this at the level that we're doing it, gauges are out the window, because these three brands of case, even though they're all head stamped 300 RUM, they're all different. One of them goes in quite loosely, one of them goes in really tightly. I set the headspace somewhere in the middle. I can fire all of these. Now when it comes to factory, when I go to sell this gun, I'm going to put a whole note in the barrel channel, forever laminated in there, that says when you go out to buy factory cases, you might find that some factory cases won't chamber. That leaves us with two options. If that's going to be your choice for the rest of your life, then we'll drop the reamer down in there and we'll extend your headspace a couple thou, and we'll bring it up to headspace on the brass of your choice. In the meantime, because brass varies wildly, and because I refuse to open the headspace up so far, because here's the simple, dirty little secret. Headspace, as done commercially and as done by most custom gunsmiths, just to keep the phone from ringing, is about 10 to 12 thousandths too long. The cases never touch the case wall. Think about that. So it's impossible. It is impossible with a long chamber to make straight cases. They're going to banana. The case heads are going to come back and blow crooked. A crooked case head, there's a long history, there's a 50, 60 year history of people dealing with crooked case heads in the bench rest world where the records are set. Crooked case heads are a pain. There's people that make fixtures and turn their case heads off flat to avoid that problem. I say, no, jam fit your cases, eliminate the problem up front, make good cases. Now the next thing to those of you that I wrote on here is shank. It's hard to find big shanks. I started to touch on it a minute ago. When it came time to do this, I decided, I got this wild hair, okay, what am I going to do with this left-handed action? The 338 didn't work out. I'm going to go with a 30. So I started looking around for 30 barrels. And I checked Bug, I checked Bruno, I checked Sinclair, I checked all of my normal sources, third gen. I went down the list and I couldn't find a barrel that was what I wanted. I finally found one at Brownell's. It's a stocked Brownell item, a Douglas, but it has an 1.2" shank. Now this goes back to, I started to explain it and I got digressed, but here I am back again. Look at that shank, guys. Just look at how silly, how poorly fitted, how small that shank is in comparison to the amount of meat that we've got available, we've got at our disposal. This little tiny 1.2" shank is simply that 1/10 of an inch around there will not withstand that 150 foot-pounds that I want to whip at it. So I had to do my recoil lug thing, and I'm doing it differently this time. Normally, I fit this up, I 680 this bad boy in place. In fact, I had it out in the lathe. I have the 680 in there. I got it tightening up and I decided, you know what? Why am I even dinking with that? I'm not going to leave it in the lathe overnight and turn it off in the morning. It's not in my way. It's just trimmed off on the mill, but it's out of the way, and it does a couple of things. It adds a little support to this little recoil lug. When this gun recoils back that direction, and it bends the recoil lug, it's going to be backed up by the... It's down in the stock. It doesn't matter. It doesn't show. From the top, it makes no difference. So I'm doing this differently. I went ahead and installed the recoil lug in the 680, and I brought it in here, and I've got the real recoil lug in behind it. And I hand tightened it as tight as I could. I'm going to let it sit overnight, lube it up in the morning, and forevermore tighten this thing down. And this whole apparatus, this whole mess will still end up on the bottom. It'll add a little buttressing support to the main recoil lug. And once it's bedded in place, it'll just be gone. This is not like my bench rest guns need to be changed out all the time. I'm swapping barrels. So this is a one-time deal. This is going together. I'm going to hit my 1/4 minute of angle unless something goes wrong and I have to start over, in which case all bets are off. But at this point, my plan is get it up, get it shooting, get her done down the road. And so I thought I would just let you know again the reasons for this custom build thing. In this case, I'm doing it so it'll shoot factory action. I mean factory ammunition. And then you can go reload it to a super high accuracy parameter. It's not for velocity. I wrote this on here one last time, guys. Not for velocity. Forget the velocity angle. That's not why we're doing this. It's just that once we understand to make good brass for superlative accuracy, we must have a custom chamber. Once we're doing a custom chamber, let's tighten that neck up and get rid of that inbore yaw. Once we've got that custom chamber which is making good cases, we have to maintain those cases. Now we've managed to wend our way around to where we see that we must have a custom built die. There are no other options. And I have tried and am trying every day all the different options that are out there. Different people, different things. It's a pain. That's the one last thing I'm waiting on. In fact, I'm trying different stuff, trying to be able to take a factory die and take a factory 3. Now, in the case of the 300 WSM, changing it to a Hellbringer doesn't work because none of the case hardening on any of the dies is thick enough to withstand the tremendous changes I throw at it. So dies are a problem, but since you cannot buy a die that's sized correctly, it's impossible. You cannot go buy a die that's big enough at the butt. They do not make such a thing. Nobody does. And so many companies out there grumble and gabble on about straightness and consistency, and no, what matters is fitment. It's almost impossible to make a die out of round or elongate or crooked or any of this kind of stuff. And then the idea of straightness is completely stupid laughable when you figure that you've got this press going up here and you got your stuff coming in from the bottom and the interface is a little sliding cup that you slide the base of the case into and it just flops around inside what's called a shell holder. So there is absolutely no efficacy to any conceivable ideas regarding linearity. The die's one function is to take this case, push it into the die, so that it fits, pull it back out of the die. It is not to align it, it's not to fix, it's not to, no. It is specifically to squeeze it back down so that it goes back in the chamber. That's it. And the key, the absolute, beyond all shadow of a doubt, key to accuracy is fitment of the case to the system. You can take the highest end, and this has happened. I could tell stories about people who have taken custom guns and gone out and put factory ammunition in them and proved to the whole world that they shoot no better than somebody else's gun. And that's true, because what you've done now is taken this custom gun and turned it into an off-the-rack gun by putting sloppy cases in it. The cases must go in tight so that they vibrate consistently. They must blow out consistently and straight and square with a square case head. Then they must be maintained. So, once we're doing that, why not take this case, which is fine on its own, give it another 10, 12, 14, 16 grains of powder, but more than that, bring the sides out more parallel, set the shoulder for better sizing, generally tighten everything up, build a custom case, call it something made up like Hellbringer, and in the end we're doing all of this for only one reason: to be able to make good cases and maintain good cases, because these are the keys, the absolute rules that cannot be broken regarding accuracy are that you must make good cases that fit well, and you must maintain that fitment. Everything else falls underneath that umbrella. So this right now we're dealing with the shank by doing this. We're dealing with all kinds of things, dealing with flexures and seizures and all sorts of parameters. But the biggest thing is, just to go back to why we're doing it. We're doing it so that we can put them all in the same hole. Because, sorry my peeps, bullets don't sleep. What you get at 100 is what you get at 1,000. It'll never get better.